everyone. Welcome to the Cynthia Linox Show. I am your host, Cynthia Linox. Thank you for joining me today on this journey of self-examination. You know, when I started this journey of self-examination, little did I know that it would have taken me into so much depth about myself. It is really thought-provoking as I research and study and get into all the psychological dynamics of the human identity and things of that nature. I'm discovering things about myself that things were always there, but it's just now that I'm becoming aware. I am becoming things are beginning to unfold. It's not like I am changing. It's just that I'm becoming aware of things about myself that I really did not pay attention to. Not because I ignored it, but it's because I just was not aware. But I really like it because what's happening is that it's really shaping me into a person that I really like. I like the Cynthia that knows about herself, the Cynthia that that can elevate her thinking, the Cynthia that can elevate her standards, the Cynthia that would know the boundaries she has, the new boundaries she has to establish, the Cynthia that knows what she wants, what she doesn't want, the Cynthia that has become aware of self-betrayal. You know, there was no language that I would have assigned to the things that I have allowed myself to. Now I know it's called self-betrayal, and it's not a matter of good or bad, right or wrong. It's simply that you or me, now when I talk, sometimes I will talk in the collective, sometimes I will refer to you, and sometimes I will refer to myself, my personal experience. So there are some things that I was not even aware that I had normalized in my life. And obviously there are things that, you know, you don't think about it because what has happened is that we have been so socialized, conditioned into a system that we don't even question. We have been conditioned into a system that we don't even question. We just take it for granted and we follow the norms. Growing up, our parents tell us certain things and we follow that. We see the way they live and we just follow that. And we don't really realize that we are part of a system that was created. That's why created for us to function in. And the same way I talk about religious deconstruction, what I am finding now is that I have had to deconstruct a lot of social conditioning established by a system that we have inherited. And I always question who says what's good or bad, right or wrong, who determined what's good for me. And the more I become aware, the way I was, even in my own personal life, I am going through, and when I say I, it's because, as I mentioned before, this journey is a personalized journey. We're going through this journey individually. It's not like you're dragging people along with you or trying to compare, who learns what. It's not about that. It's not even about sharing the experiences that we are having in terms of awareness and being awakened. But the people that are around us is going to affect the people that are around us. It's going to affect your personal relationship. It's going to affect your marriage, your partner, your situationship, your significant other, your kids' family, friends. Why? Because now, let me just preface this. As I am learning things about myself, I am implementing the changes that works for me. Why? Because I am liking the person that I am becoming. I am liking the person, the Cynthia that is learning truth, and the Cynthia that can be honest with herself. The Cynthia that has enough courage to make, not even courage, because after a while, when when you grow in a certain level of confidence, you just implement the changes. Why? Because they're changes that are good for you. Remember, the objective here is to live a fulfilled life. And whether you have 10, 20, 30, 40 summers ahead of you, you want to be able to spend those days in a fulfilled life. You want to spend it in truth about yourself. You want to be honest with yourself and not live according to inherited beliefs or social structure or to please other people. You want to live a life that is fulfilling to you. And yes, it will affect the people around you, because it's not that you're changing, as I said before, it's not that you're changing, is that you are unfolding. What you are becoming is who you have always been. You were simply not aware that you possess the entire universe within you. All the answers that we need is already within us. It's just that when we position ourselves to learn more and to be inquisitive and to be curious about life and about ourselves and about our minds and about our emotions and all of that, is when things begin to unfold, because life does not push or force awareness on you unless you position yourself as ready to receive, to to glean from the knowledge and to have your questions answered. I have learned that I have been an over functioning person. Isn't that something? Over functioning. It's not, again, these are language, as I do my research, these are things that I am learning. And I would have never think of myself as over functioning, but I have been. And doing things that doesn't really pertain to me. Over functioning is when you get into like a fixer upper. You are doing so much, and it's at the expense of your own peace, of your own quietness, of your own time, of your own growth, of your own joy. You are doing so much, taking care of so much things that doesn't pertain to you. In the meantime, you're living, amongst people, among adults that are able to do things as well for themselves, but you're always getting in the midst, doing things and getting in the way and just over functioning. Why? Because we have been so conditioned to think a certain way, and we react a certain way, we respond a certain way. And what I am finding is that as I am letting go of that notion, as I am letting go, as I am debunking those thoughts and structures and traditional norms, as I am debunking those from my life, as I am becoming aware that I am an over functioning person, my life is really coming to a place of a better flow. It's more fluid, and a lot of it has to do with me prioritizing myself, choosing myself above all, above everything, above others. Not everyone is ready to do that, because with it, you can also have guilt. You can also feel guilty just because you're so used to doing things for others. For instance, we hear things like, and this is just an example because somebody mentioned this, and this person, she's in the dating scene and so forth. This woman, and she's all excited about this and that, the other, and she's dating this person, and she likes this person and so forth, and then she said, well, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. That was in a conversation, and now I'm so keen in listening to people, what they're saying, and I said, I asked her, what do you mean by that? She said, well, they said that the way to to get a man, or one of the ways, I guess, to get a man is to be able to cook and prepare a feast, and to be able to feed him and so forth. And I thought, wow, that is a conditioning, that is a conditioning that we have inherited, a social conditioning that we have inherited. When you're talking about two grown adults, and I know that it may sound a little radical, but that's what my show is about. It can be sometimes polemic, simply because I challenge tradition and I defy some norms that no longer serves me. But like, who told us that? So so there's this conversation. So Lisa said, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. And then Dorothy is here complaining about, she goes to work, she comes home, the kids are there, the homework, the PTA meeting, and she has to do all that. And then she has to cook and tidy up the house and so forth. And then her husband comes home, and he, he puts down his briefcase and he goes to rest, to take a seat in the lazy chair, and has the remote, waiting for dinner. So with that kind of thinking and that kind of dynamics, you can think of Dorothy getting into this over functioning mode. Why? Because not only is Dorothy working full time, not only is Dorothy responsible for the three kids that are, well, when I say responsible, if she doesn't take care of making sure they do the homework and making sure they're fed, and then preparing them for bed and so forth, then it is expected that that is what she does. In the meantime, Dorothy is working. So, you have Lisa over here and Dorothy over here, and Dorothy is like, she is just she's mad as hell, simply because she's been over functioning for so long and not realizing it. Why? Because she's thinking that, well, all of that has become part of her identity. We're also talking about the identity architecture, and all of that has become part of her identity. And for her husband, come home, he works full time as well, and come home to relax. That has become normalized in their household. So here's Dorothy, she is mad as hell, and here's Lisa, trying to get, connect with her fiance, boyfriend, whatever, and she's talking about way to a man's heart. Of course, Lisa is a whole lot. She's at that stage where it's all a novelty for her at this point. Dorothy has been married a few years, so she knows what it's like. She started here as well. So, they are at each other, and, Dorothy is trying to convince Lisa that, that is really just a social, traditional norm that we've been fed, and, we normalize it. And then comes a point then where you are exhausted. Why? Because you are over functioning. And with that, what I find that in this whole mindset of over functioning, I find that you kind of lose emotional connection in the midst of it all, because we normalize the behaviors, we normalize the habit, we normalize the patterns. So we don't take the time to think about ourselves. What are our needs? And when I say what are our needs, in the terms of, I'm talking about Dorothy and Lisa, and of course they're both women. This is not pitting women against men. It's just functions. It's just functions. It's just patterns. It's just social structures that we have inherited and we adhere to. And who says what's right or wrong? Who says what's right or wrong? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, you have two functioning adults. You have two functioning adults. I'm now talking on behalf of Dorothy, because Dorothy she is just not happy with her journey of the more she is discovering, the more she is unfolding about herself, the more aware she is becoming, she finds herself angry and resentful. Why is that? She's angry and resentful because she's been doing some of the things that she's doing, some of the responsibilities she's doing, it's because of social conditioning. It's because of social, we have been socialized to think that way. And we think it's our responsibility. And in essence, it really, like, who is to say? Say, for instance, somebody gave an example and it was so hilarious. Somebody said, if my husband gets frustrated because he cannot find a pair of socks to wear, to put on. And if he, the moment he says, where are my socks? The first thing we do is jump into problem resolution mode. I know that by experience. Problem resolution mode. We jump and we look in the drawers, and we try to match the socks, or perhaps the basket, with the clean clothes that are not yet folded, and we try to find a pair of socks. But that is so automatic. That's me. I've done that. And he's like, now, if I am getting ready and I am putting on my makeup or something, whatever, and I says, where's my, where are my brushes? Where are my whatever. My husband is not going to raise a finger. He will not even become frustrated. I would be the one frustrated. He would not really react. That would not even be a trigger for him. Why? Because he's been conditioned. He's like, your makeup brush. Or even if I say, where are my underwears? Where are my bra? Where's my strapless bra or something like that? He's not going to react to that. That's not a trigger for him. As a matter of fact, somebody said, and this was on social media, it was funny because there was this woman, she was having her menstrual cycle and she ran out of pads. And she asked her husband, some husbands, they don't even want to go to the store to get menstrual pads because for them, it's just, it's just not a thing that a man does. And again, that is social conditioning. But anyway, this woman asked her husband to get her some pads because she's having her menstrual cycle. She says, get me some pads with wings. And for us women, we know what pads with wings are. They're the menstrual pads, and they have wings, and the wings is just a style, a pattern, if you will, that is more helpful to contain and so forth. So the husband goes out and he gets her some maxi pads, and then he stopped at Wingstop and got her some wings, teriyaki wings, chicken wings. So he comes home, when I see that on social media, it's actually a couple acting out. So I'm not sure if it was stage or if it's reality, but it is funny. It is so hilarious because the husband goes out and he gets a box of maxi pads for his wife, and then he stops at Wingstop to get her some wings. She said, "Get me some pads with wings." Pads with wings. you know, for you men that are listening, pad with wings mean a certain type of sanitary napkins, if you will, that has wings on them, and I think it says so on the box or something. I don't know, because tampons is something that I would be thinking of, not pads. But anyway, he comes back with maxi pads, and then a dozen, 2 dozen. As a matter of fact, I think he said something like 2 dozen wings, chicken wings of different flavors and things of that nature. That's how naive, if you will, or not knowledgeable. Why? Because that's not even something that the husband is going to think about. But we are so socialized, we are so conditioned, we are so programmed to think a certain way of ourselves and the things that are required of us, the things that are expected of us, the things that are anticipated of us, that we don't even have time to think of ourselves. When it comes to the functionality of the house, and this whole argument about a woman that is a stay at home mom, I'm telling you something, that stay at home mom thing, there is so much work involved in that, because not only is the mom staying at home taking care of the children, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, she's taking care of the whole house. Because when kids are toddlers, they have toys around and just a whole lot of stuff. And then there's the calendar, there are doctor's visit, there is school, if they're school age, regardless if they're kindergarten or daycare. There is appointments, there are teachers, there is just so much. And then there's the husband. There are things to be done for the husband, perhaps set up doctor's appointments, fill medication if that's the case. I know, like for my husband, a replacement credit card came in today. I'm the one that's going to call to activate it. I am kind of letting go of things little by little, simply because what I am finding is that I don't want to stay in this over-functioning mode. A lot of women are in relationships, and some for many years. You come to adjust. You come to adjust to life as it is, and you put yourself secondary. You take yourself out of the priority zone. When I said earlier about self-betrayal, it's because of things, I never, like I used to say, when it comes to vacation, vacation is for my husband, he decides. And I was thinking about that the other day, and I started thinking, like, why is that? He never said that. He never asked me to think that way. He never asked me to do that. He never asked me to take that position. No, I assume that position because I am thinking my time is a lot more flexible. I have a lot of flexibility throughout the day. He's at the office, so when he decides that he wants time off, we are going to do what he wants to do. And I was thinking about that. Of course, this is all part of my debunking, my social debunking and my conditioning. I'm just getting rid of all of those thoughts that I have assumed for myself, which doesn't really, they're not necessary. It's just adding more to myself. And so I got to thinking about that, and I thought, you know what, no, of course, we always come to a to an agreement. I would pick like two or three places or continents, because like if we go to Europe, we visit like 4 or 5 countries at the same, in the same trip. So I would say, why don't we go here, Eastern Europe or Northern Europe, or this, that, the other, or here, or let's go on a cruise. And then we would come to an agreement. But I would have made the initial choices. But it never occurred to me to say, okay, here's where I want to go, and this is what I propose. It just never occurred to me to say that. Now I have. Now that I've thought of it, now that I've become aware of it, it's like, who determines that? Nobody did. My husband never told me to think that way or to make him priority. No, I did it myself. And now I am questioning why. Like who said that? Who determines that? And why? So, I don't regret the version of myself that I used to be. Now, if I could change it, I definitely would. I don't regret it because I wasn't unhappy. But looking back, there were some things that I could have changed, modified, correct, leveled up, and things of that nature. But, it's past. So I'm not going to, haul that memory into the present. I'm going to stay in the present. The past is the memory, the future is your imagination, and your present is what brings the things imagined into manifestation. So that's my course of action. But nobody forced me. Nobody forced me. And it's so different the way we think, because if I remember last year sometime, I said, let's just take a quick trip to San Antonio. And my husband said, no, I don't want to drive to San Antonio because, it's like about 4 or 5 hours. And it's really nice when you get there because, you have your car, even though you don't need a car, because you could always, rent a car also, but you don't need a car once you're staying on the Riverwalk, and your hotel is right there and all the activities. And if you want to go further, like to go out to a fancy restaurant or something recommended, you can always take an Uber or a taxi or something like that. But he said no. He outright said no. So I became miffed about it. I was not even in this season of self-examination, but it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I said, wait a minute. I said, you don't just get to say no. And so we left that hanging. And then later on during the day, he said, well, why don't we fly? My point is this, sometimes for men, it's totally different. It's not that he didn't want to go to San Antonio. He just didn't want to drive because it's kind of stressful when you're, the traffic, and, it's just 4 hours. Well, 4 hours going, 4 hours coming back. And it's kind of stressful for me because he's the one that would drive. For me, sitting as a passenger, it's nice because I am just chilling and looking at the beautiful scenery and so forth. But then he says, why don't we fly? And then I said, oh, okay, yeah, we'll get tickets and fly. And that's what we did. We bought tickets and we went there and we had such a fantastic time. Once you get there and you take your Uber and get to the hotel, it's right on the Riverwalk. You're right there, and all of the things that you want to do is right there. The canal, that gondola ride in the canal, and not gondola, it's just kind of a boat thing. And anything else that you want to do, you can always have access to it and so forth. So but he didn't have any. My point is this: he did not have any problem saying no. Absolutely not. We're not going to San Antonio. Now, if I wasn't, if I did not respond the way I did, it's like, wait a minute, you don't just get to say no. That, of course, put him in another thinking mode. It's like, oh, okay. But if I was like, oh, okay, that's fine, we're not going, then we wouldn't have gone. And he would have had the opportunity to just say no, to that. But when I said, you don't just get to say no, that's something that I want to do. And then he comes back with, why don't we just fly? And then that's when I realized he just didn't want to drive. But he would gladly go to San Antonio. So my point is, men sometimes think differently, and they just react based on, there's certain entitled way of thinking that men have that we don't have, that women don't have. But a lot of the things that we have taken on, we have taken it upon ourselves to over function. And when we scale back, then guilt sets in. So we have to learn to manage guilt. Because, if you say, well, you know what, I am not these, like, certain things now, I am so becoming aware, and it's good for everybody, because not only it helps you, get out of that over functioning mode, it helps you, and it, not only are you growing, but you are becoming so aware of yourself. You're stepping into a life of fulfillment and knowing more about who you are. And at the same time, you're setting up boundaries, and your self-respect grows, and you get to a place where you know who you are. And you will never come to that place where you know who you are and this is the destination. No, because why? It's fluid. As time goes on, as the seasons pass, you will get to know more of who you are, and the things you like, the things you will accept, the things you will tolerate, the things that's okay with you. You will get to know all those things about yourself. And if you're by yourself, it's even, you have an advantage, because you don't have anyone else to think about except for the people that you know. And once you're going through this journey of self-examination, your social circle shrinks. It becomes smaller. Which is a great thing, because if you enjoy yourself, if you like being with yourself, and enjoy who you are and the time you spend with yourself. And for me, it's reading. I could sit and read and research and check things. And sometimes I talk with my coach, and just run things, and they would tell me things about, because they follow my trajectory, and tells me some things that they see in myself and how I am evolving. They tell me a lot about my evolution, things that I don't sometimes pay attention to, but it helps me, even though I recognize the when things unfold in me, and then the peace that comes with it. This young man asked his grandfather. He's been married for like 60 years. No, not 60 years. Well, close to 60 years to the grandmother. And he's like, I don't know, 25, the grandson. And he said, and this was a, Latino family. And he asked his grandfather, how can you love the same woman for that long, for 60 years? How can you stay in love with the same woman for 60 years? It was incomprehensible to the grandson. And the grandfather says, I have not loved the same woman for 60 years. So, the grandson is like, what? Like, what do you mean? And I wrote it down here because I thought it was so fascinating. He said, no, 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 no. Evidently, they met in their early 20s. And he said, when I met your grandmother and she was in her early 20s, at that time, she needed excitement and passion, affection, adventure, spontaneity. We just did things and enjoyed ourselves and enjoyed the sex and enjoyed the travel and enjoyed going dancing and just enjoyed a spontaneous life full of adventures, hiking and snow skiing and just a whole bunch of excitement in her 20s. He said, by the time she reached 30, then she wanted something else. She turned into a different type of woman. By then, of course, she probably had kids. And he said she wanted stability, she wanted trust, dependability, and accountability. Because by then she was raising children. So she became a different type of woman. The woman that would dress up in her fancy clothes and go out in her tight jeans and her halter tops and go out. That wasn't the person that she was in her 30s. Why? She was a mother. So she wanted stability. She wanted to know she could trust her husband, him, the grandfather. She wanted someone that was responsible because evidently she was a stay-at-home mother, the grandmother. And she needed someone to be accountable for the decisions that are made in the household. He said by the time she reached 40 and 50, between her 40s going on 50, he said she needed emotional connection. By then, she needed support. She needed nervous system regulation. She needed a confidant and she needed her peace. That is so, when I think of it, 40 and 50, at 40-ish, women start evolving, start changing biologically. There are biological changes that happens in a woman's body. So she start changing. She first start going through perimenopause and then menopause, and then with that, there are symptoms that comes along with that. So between 40 and 50, she needs emotional connection. He said to his grandson, she needed to know that I was there with her emotionally connected, that I was there to support her. I was there to hold her, to hug her, to kiss her, to let her know that this is the place that she could come to land. This is the place that she could feel safe. This is the place that she could feel at peace. This here, my chest, my arms, my presence is where she needed to come. If she had anything to share, anything to talk about, she felt she could feel safe to come into his presence and share, cry, trust, all of that. He needed to set himself up, and he said, I began to love a whole different type of woman. And as she was going through that, she started asking herself a whole bunch of questions about herself because, that change can be sometimes, depending on, the woman, a challenge, just laborious. And so he had to be present to give her the support that she needed. And at the same time, to make sure that she was so secure in him that her nervous system would remain calm, that she would not be agitated, that she would not be frustrated, that she would not be aggravated or in anger. She's already dealing with what do they call it? The heat, the heat of the hot flashes. She's already dealing with that. So she needed to know, or he needed to know, or study her and make himself available for those changes and love her through those different seasons. Remember, in her 20s, she was adventurous, passionate, sexual and excitement and so forth. In her 30s, she needed the stability, the dependability, accountability, trust, and so forth. 40s and 50s, it's a whole different ball game. And as he had this conversation with his grandson, he said, and that is how I got to love the same woman in different seasons. By the time she reached 60, he said she needed a partner, a companion, and a friend. And because I walked through all these seasons with her, I was able to be all those things to her. Now, personally, I think that's pretty genius because, and very uncommon. You don't find a lot of relationships where, and, obviously this is, an older couple, they're probably traditionalists, that generation. But it's very precise. It's very intentional. The older gentleman, the grandfather, was very intentional. And I just like this whole season because, and I don't know if he started that way, if he was instructed by, if he learned it from his parents or whatever. But the point is, evidently he went into his marriage probably thinking, I want this to last forever. And you just can't love the same person the way you started out. Why? Because we evolve, we grow, we develop, we progress. And the version of yourself that you were in your 20s, and I'm not just talking physical, your physical beauty, or I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the version of yourself. In most cases, I know in my 20s, I was like, it's like just fun, adventure, travel, dating, and dancing. I used to like to go to dance. I remember in New York City, we used to go to this Brazilian place. It's called La Ipanema. Oh man, and I just used to. Anyway, during that time, so that's what you do. You put on your altar thing and you go out and you dance and you have a lot of fun and that's it. And then in your 30s, it's a whole different ball game for many women. Many women, they start a family in their late 20s or middle 20s, whatever, late 20s. And by the 30s, they are looking to buy a house. And so they want dependability, accountability. They want that stability. They want to be able to trust in their relationship that things are stable, things are secure. She's busy doing this with the kids in the house, and the husband is busy bringing home the bacon. At least that's what you hope. And if you're not mindful of those changes, the different versions of yourself, what can happen is that you can get distracted. That's why a lot of, if you're of the mindset of loving the same person or being with the same person, for years and years and years, and not being mindful of the changes and the evolution that we go through, then yeah, you can get bored, you can get tired, you can get, go into apathy, apathetic. You can go into living a monotonous life, living on autopilot, doing things by default, and you just go round and round and round and round. And that's why I always talk about one needs to be intentional. You need to be intentional in everything that you do, in your thoughts, in your relationship, in your patterns, in your habits. You need to be intentional. When you think about your partner, your spouse, your significant other, your boyfriend, whatever, or even your kids grow up. So you can't treat a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old the way you treated them when they were 10. You just can't. So you have to be intentional. You have to understand. You have to read. You have to read your kids, read the room, know who they are, and see their evolution. You have to know that. But when it comes to relationship, especially, you have to be so intentional that if you want to have, a relationship that's fluid, that's fun, that's respectful, that's just fun, that you can enjoy, where you can laugh and where you can be yourself. That's the whole thing. If you're, especially for women, and I'm talking particularly to women today, because the conversation that that's happened this week, they were mainly women, talking about their situations and so forth. But if you are, if your nervous system is dysregulated, I'm telling you, you first of all, you don't have peace. You're agitated. You're anxious. Sometimes depressed. Even if it's a low-grade depression, you're depressed, and you just can't function. And you're looking for external agencies to fix you, and it doesn't happen that way. If you can't regulate your own nervous system, if you have a partner that is aware of that, and I don't. I've said in the past that you have to teach people how to love you and so forth. And now I kind of question that, because you want people to be themselves and not, if you have to, you have to know your partner, and you have to want to, and you have to be intentional. And I don't, I personally, now I don't think you like now I'm not gonna teach my husband at this stage of my life, in this season, how to love me. He needs to figure that out, just like I'll figure out his needs. But I am more mindful. I am intentional. I study, I research, I look up stuff. Why? Because I want to know, and because I'm going through this journey. When I started this whole journey of self-discovery, and then journey of self-examination and identity architecture, I did not even see myself in it. It was just something that I submit myself to learning and to knowing. I did not even see myself. I did not even know that, a major part of my life that I had gone through, that I would self-betrayed. And when I say that is not, that I was bad to myself, because I don't, I wasn't unhappy. But now that I'm aware of what it is, and aware of the choices and the decisions that I made back then, I wouldn't do that anymore. I remember one of the joys, and I'm just kind of sharing some personal things with you guys. One of the joys of my husband, he used to like taking me to the store, and in corporate America, I used to wear suits, and every season or so, he would, go to the store, and he would buy like 3 or 4 suits, outfits, and so forth. And he loved that. I would try it on, and he was, that's good, that whatever, and we would walk out. After a while, back then, I didn't want that anymore. After a while, I thought, you know what? No, I kind of want to do my own. I kind of want to go to the store and get my own stuff, and buy my own shoes, and do this. And this just really happened by osmosis. I just became at a different level. So I just started going to the store by myself, and I would shop. I would buy 2-3 pairs of shoes, and he said, well, how come you didn't take me shopping with you? And it did not even. I would be like, I could not even explain it, simply because I wanted that sense of autonomy. I wanted that sense of autonomy. It's self-authorship. It's interesting how the human element, the brain, the mind, and when you think progressively. And so we stopped that. And until this day, sometimes we'll go shopping together, but it's not like, we go and I buy what I want, and if I like it, then I like it. It's not contingent upon his decision or whether or not he likes it. But in most cases, we agree on things and so forth. But to see, that shows how we evolve. But it's important that we understand the person that we're with. This grandfather, I wish I could meet him personally. And he talks about emotional connection. And what he shared with the grandson is that, because he's come to understand that even for their moments of intimacy, that emotional connection was necessary. If he did not meet that dynamics of the relationship, emotional connection or regulated nervous system, that what happens is that she would be so guarded. The grandmother would be so guarded, protective, because your body goes into protective mode. If your nervous system is not regulated, your body goes into protective mode, because it all works together: your emotions, your mind, your thoughts, all of that. So for those of you, as a matter of fact, some women were sharing about, they went to the doctor because they thought they had a low libido and blah blah blah, and then after they realized, and we talk more about this, they realized they didn't have a low libido. Is that their nervous system was dysregulated. There was no emotional connection, no emotional connection to their partners, their husband, their significant other. There was no emotional connection. Why? Because they didn't understand how that works. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to know this about yourself. When you know this, then you know that you are okay. You are okay once your nervous system is regulated. Once you've got the emotional connection. Once you know that you have the support of your husband, your partner, your significant other, whatever. Then you can relax. You can relax and enjoy intimacy. You can enjoy. Why? Because you will open up. You will surrender. You will open up. You will surrender. Why? Because there's trust. And then you feel confident. Why? Because of the emotional connection that grandpa has made you feel, to know that you have my support. My chest is where you will come to land. You can come to me. Here is where you will find safety. Here's where you will find peace. Here's where you will find support. Here's where you will find that you can trust. Fascinating, my friend. Here's where you will find that you can trust. So then a woman goes, she knows that she doesn't have to hold on to anything or raise her guards or be protective. Why? Because she feels whether it's fear or just agitated, anxious, depressed, maybe. She can go into a mode where she is relaxed. And then he said, and when the woman is in her 60s, he says, by then now, she needs a partner. She's gone through all the different stages, all the different versions of womanhood. Oh, that is so fascinating. The 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and 50s. And that, I think, can be the most challenging, because that's when there's a lot of changes. The 40s and 50s, biological changes, and those are natural biological changes. And it is what it is. So you don't, you mentally, what And what I think it's important is that you communicate with your spouse, significant other, partner. You communicate with them and you let them know. And that's where nervous system regulation, that's where emotional connection comes in. If you can go to your partner and say, look, this is what's happening, this is what I'm going through, or whatever, and you can talk, then it prepares the other person to understand the version of you that's transitioning through this period. It's not forever. And I think a woman knows that she has the support and the empathy of her partner, I think it mitigates anxiety and depression and just being not happy with the hot flashes and all stuff like that. Why? Because she knows that she has a place to land. I don't know about you, my friend, but I find this fascinating. Why? Because it's evolution. It's the way we evolve. And I know this was geared mostly toward women today, but that's okay. That's who we are. And that's what those are the stages that we go through. And I say that simply because by default, I'm a woman, and that's what, when I listen to conversations and the people that I connect with mainly are women, as opposed to, men. We don't disregard the needs of man, but I'm just talking from the experience of a woman. My friend, this journey does not have a destination. This journey is fluid. And the more you unfold into that knowledge of who you are, the more you become aware, the more you awaken into that person that you are, the more fulfilled your life will be. The more fulfilled your life will be. Having understanding. That's why it is said that in all you're getting, get understanding. And once you get to understand yourself, there's just no other way. You don't need anyone to understand you, because some people are set on not understanding you. But once you come to understand who you are, yourself, that's what's important. I'm going to leave you with that, my friend, so you can sup on that. We meet here every Thursday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you can't join me at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, the icons down here, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, you can pick up the feed 24/7. If you want to drop me a note, see the email here, info@thecynthialinoxshow.com, and I will either respond to you or, we'll talk about things that you are interested in. I find this subject fascinating because it really helped us evolve in a way where it's gradual. And as we implement the changes that we know, the truth we know, and be honest with ourselves, we see that we are becoming better human beings for ourselves. And consequently, people get the best of us just because we are the best of who we are. I will see you next week, same time, same place. In the meantime, have a fantastic weekend, my friend, whatever you do. This Friday, tomorrow, and then we have the weekend. Here we are in the middle of August.